Welcome to PADNET Presents. I'm your host, Derek Simpson, and on this show, we always try to bring you the best of leadership and those people that make an impact in our community, in our programs, and in this particular case, in the state of California. We're very pleased to have join us Ms. Linné Stout. Linné is the director of the Community Service Development Department of the state of California, and that's important to us here at PADNET and Long Beach Community Action Partnership because it's that source that actually funds us as a community action agency. And in this show, we hope to share with you a little bit of insight about who Linné is and why it's important for you to know about CSD, as we would call it, and how you might be able to get involved eventually in maybe the community action agency here in Long Beach or in other areas of the state as you watch this particular program. So let me say welcome, Linné.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And now you can relax and breathe, and we're going to talk about all the great things that go on at CSD. And I say great things because many people don't know what community action is in the state of California. But before we get into CSD, I wanted to talk a little bit about who you are and how you got into your particular role. And I mentioned in the opening that Governor Brown actually appointed you in May of 2013. How did that process go? How did you get on the radar of the governor in that regard?
Well, it is definitely a journey, and it was a fast-paced but very fulfilling one. I started at the Department of Social Services previously and moved over to the Department of Community Services and Development in 2011. Was fortunate to work under the leadership of the former director, John Wagner, and had an opportunity to act after he left and was then provided the opportunity to be appointed. And it is definitely an honor and a pleasure to serve in that capacity to lead the department. And I'm also very flattered by the fact that I'm only one of a very few women who have ever led the Department of Community Services and Development.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
I didn't realize that, right. So when you look at the appointments, I know that, for instance, in my particular case, I believe it was the Secretary of State was involved as well. Is that the norm in different departments? I mean, I know we just had elections and Governor Brown is back in office, so everything's good with you, but is that typically the way assignments are doled out at the state level?
Yes, it is. And, you know, I have to say as well that the community action agencies were very vital in the support for me to step in as the interim director and as well as to be appointed. So I think that's key. I think one thing about Governor Brown is really wanting to ensure that the leaders at the departments have a connection to the stakeholders and to the individuals for whom the services are being provided, especially in the Health and Human Services Agency.
Now, I know when you served as the chief of the Child Protection and Family Services branch, that you were really involved there before coming here. How do you find that maybe some of those experiences translate into what you do now in CSD, if at all?
Oh, I think definitely there's a lot that they share in common. Working at the Department of Social Services, we're serving a lot of the same vulnerable populations that the community action agencies serve as well. And I also, for me, social service programs and being able to provide a service to individuals who need a hand up. I volunteered at a young age at the Children's Receiving Home. I've been very passionate about children that are the foster youth and helping them as well. And so it was definitely a natural fit to move from one social services department into this, and there's just a lot in common. And I think what was helpful is having connections at the Department of Social Services to ensure that there's ways in which we can partner with those other departments, whether it's social services, healthcare services, education, housing, because many of the populations that our community action agencies serve need those services as well.
Now, people tend to be cynical about the bureaucracy of state government. When you talk about those departments working together, do you find at your level that is happening more often than not, that there is really that synergy at the state level?
I do, particularly at the Department of Social Services. They have a state interagency team, which we asked to be a part of, because I thought it was very important for us to be able to make those connections. So I do think that there are things that work really well. One thing that we brought to that forum was information on the earned income tax credit and the need that so many families have in order to get that tax credit and be able to provide more for their families.
Now, one of the things as I was doing research talked about just how you were involved with statewide training and staff development, and what's your philosophy in that? I know for me as executive director here, I'm the face out front, but I know it's the team behind me that really gets things done. Did you find that that was important and that's why you were so involved from a statewide development perspective?
Well, specifically at the Department of Social Services, my role was in the training of social workers throughout the state, and so it was a coordinated effort working with many of the colleges throughout the state. But I'm definitely a believer in the team and making sure that you have a strong team and providing the training that's really needed in order to make sure that every member has what they need.
Cool. And when you mentioned earlier your passion for working with foster youth, what brought that on? Was it a particular experience that you had working in that department, or?
It actually came about from reading an article in the Parade magazine many years ago about the court-appointed special advocate program, and I had young children at the time, and so it had always stayed in the back of my mind as something that I wanted to do, and later did become a court-appointed special advocate for a foster youth, who I'm no longer a CASA, but I continue to mentor even now. She's going to be 18 soon, and I started, she was 7. So it's something that I felt very strongly about wanting to do, and I enjoy working with youth and children.
What would you say to others? Because I know that though you may not be doing it anymore, that I would imagine the need is still really great for foster youth to have someone in that capacity. Is that a role that you would encourage others to take on in the communities they serve?
Definitely. I think children in foster care need a voice. I think an advocate to ensure that whether it's education or healthcare needs are being met. But even if that's not a role that a person is able to fulfill, being just a mentor is just a huge difference in the life of a foster child.
What would that feel like if I wanted to be, as Derek, a mentor for a foster youth? I know I tell people professionally, when you choose a mentor, on one level you want to get that person. I want Linné Stout, she's the director, I want her to be my mentor. But if in fact Linné Stout's schedule doesn't allow for me to ever see her or talk to her, I need to get someone who's more accessible. But if I wanted to be a mentor, what would you say would be the demands of the time and otherwise?
Probably a mentor. When I was working as a CASA, it was about 8 hours a month. Some of that was seeing the youth, so I tried to see the youth every weekend. And then a lot of it was also having to write court reports. So it depends upon the type of mentorship. As a mentor, one thing about the youth is they're very appreciative of your time. And so it's amazing how little you can give and how much it's truly appreciated it's huge.
So we come from that life then and all that you were doing, and you have that institutional knowledge of how those departments work, and then you move over to CSD, and you didn't come in as director initially. How did that transition occur?
Well, initially I actually came in as on loan. It was something that was, a temporary basis, but I think because of the work that the department does in really meeting the needs of the community at the local level, it became clearly something that I was passionate about wanting to know more about. And it was, just a progression of events that occurred that then allowed me to step into that role. And I think right now, with poverty at the forefront and really trying to understand the issues and the challenges and the barriers, I see it as a great opportunity, challenging one, but really one that I'd really like to be involved in to really make effective change.
And when you look at CSD, in terms of funding, as it relates to other departments at the state level, you're somewhat unique, right, in terms of how the funding comes into that particular department. Can you share how that works?
Well, most other departments aren't 100% federally funded, and up until this state fiscal year, we were entirely federally funded, but we do now have some funding from the cap and trade program, so the greenhouse gas reduction fund. But it's definitely different not only in where our dollars come from, but the scope of the dollars. So, you know, I mean, we have a relatively small department with small amount of funds, and it's block grant funding, which is very different as well. But the dollars definitely go far and do a lot for the community, yeah.
Right. Now, when you say small, I mean, small is relative. Could you share maybe in terms of your budget or the number of staff that work in CSD?
Well, the number of staff in the department, I've often said we're small but mighty. The number of staff is about 100 staff total. And our total budget is around probably 200 million, maybe a little over 200 million with the cap and trade funding, probably closer to 300 million. So there's other departments that definitely have, you know, when you look at operating CalWorks, CalFresh, which is an entitlement, you know, their dollars are far outnumber the funds that we receive.
So as I remember, in those years where, for instance, we couldn't get a budget signed at the state level, on the one hand, that was not impacting monies coming into CSD because it was federally funded, but on the other hand, it did tie up things because it was you are a state agency.
Correct.
So I guess you kind of have to play a balancing act oftentimes on how you work that. And this year is the first year then with cap and trade.
Correct, yes.
Wow. Do you find that to be challenging in any way, or is it pretty seamless?
Well, I think whenever you have a new program, and although it was based off of our weatherization assistance program, there's definitely new elements to it. So there's always challenges, but I think with those challenges come a lot of opportunity. And so we're definitely up for that, and so is our network of agencies.
Great. Well, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we want to share more about Linné's background and about the work that she does within CSD, not just her alone, but the team of 100 staff that she has that work very diligently in support of those of us throughout the network in California that provide community action services. Speaking of those agencies throughout the state, we had the honor of doing some public service announcements with several of those agencies, and throughout this program, our intent is to share insight on our sister agencies throughout the state of California that provide community action services. I'm your host, Derek Simpson, and we'll be right back.
Fresno Economic Opportunities Commission is one of the largest community action agencies in the country, serving over 275,000 residents of Fresno County and beyond. In our 47 years, we've created over 30 programs to help people in all phases of their lives. Fresno EOC, transforming and inspiring lives.
Hi, you're invited to help people change lives. The Community Action Agency of Butte County, Inc. works to promote economic security and opportunities in our communities. We do this through our Save You Energy, North State Food Bank, Esplanade House, and senior nutrition programs. Please join us and see the change.
The National Association for State Community Services Programs, or NASCASP, is a membership organization for state administrators of the Community Services Block Grant and Weatherization Assistance Program. Our mission is to assist states in responding to poverty issues. To this end, we provide a number of trainings and tools to assist the CSBG and WAP networks in increasing their capacity and results. Visit our website today for more information.
Welcome back to PADNET Presents. I'm your host, Derek Simpson, and on this particular program, we've had the pleasure of having conversation with Linné Stout, who is the director of the Community Service Development Department at the state of California. That's important to us here at PADNET because that is a primary source of funding that comes from CSD, as we call it, to Long Beach Community Action Partnership that helps us do the great work that we do to help families move from poverty to self-sufficiency here in the city of Long Beach. And for Linné, that means that particular mission spreads throughout the state of California. So Linné, when we left, we were talking about your background, and we had gotten into your role now at CSD. When you think about the challenges and successes that you found once you took over your former role as director, can you share maybe what some of those were that come to mind?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges when I first came to the department is we had funding from ARA for our weatherization assistance program, and there had definitely been some challenges in being able to expend the dollars and to get the homes weatherized. So I think working collectively with the network, we were able to be very successful, and I think it really provided a great opportunity for us as a network to really learn and grow and have more opportunities.
Now you talk about the network. From your desk, what would you expect of us as the leadership of the agencies throughout the network, ideally to work best with the CSD staff? What would you like to see more of?
Well, I think it's been working really well. I think, productive partnerships are key to any successful endeavor, and having effective communications. I think the network steps up and participates. We've had various work groups in order to solve various problems, and those have been very effective. And so I think just being able to come to the department and have conversations and help us to understand some of the challenges at the local level so we can make the best decisions in order to get the services that individuals need.
Now I know that almost for my entire 8 years it feels like that I've been in community action, I've been on the CalNEVA board. At least probably 7 of those years. And CalNEVA is a valuable resource I found. I found by getting involved, I learned more about what the rest of my colleagues throughout the state did, and it was kind of a baptism by fire by jumping in on the board, but met great colleagues. How do you view at CSD from your desk the importance of CalNEVA and its role throughout the network?
Well, as you mentioned, they are very dynamic and different, and so it's very important to have that diversity on the board. They're also very supportive, and they also let the department know in areas where they may not agree. There's the knowledge base is really instrumental, and there's a lot of directors who serve on the board that have a long history and know the programs really well. So I think it's been a very supportive entity with the department, and the training and technical assistance that we're able to have provided through CalNEVA's association is also important.
Yes, we find that the peer-to-peer and other innovative programs that they've done have been helpful to us as an agency as we grew, and hopefully that's the case throughout the state. I know also when we talk about boards, what makes us unique as community action agencies is we have tripartite boards. Most people are familiar with nonprofits, but not the term tripartite boards. If you were speaking to people out there in the community about joining a community action board, from a CSD director's perspective, how would you encourage them to get involved in community action?
Well, I think to the degree that individuals are really wanting to make a difference in their communities, participating on the tripartite board is a potential opportunity. And I think it's unique in the sense that it has low-income representation, which is key to the tripartite. So you're able to really have diversity among your board members that's so important to really making sure that everybody understands the needs of the community we're trying to serve.
Right. So we're here on PADNET, and I know that you're just loving this interview.
I think it's my first, yes.
And you're doing great, boss. You're doing great. So we talk about the uniqueness. I know one of our colleagues, Tom Tenario, always says when you've seen one community action agency, you've seen one community action agency. And you think about us here, and we have PADNET as a resource, and we're getting the word. This is a conversation. Maybe people are hearing for the first time things from you that they didn't know, ideally, and have that. I believe business is based on relationships, and hopefully this helps to form closer relationships as a result of knowing more about you. But how would you see not only PADNET as a unique resource, but maybe innovative ideas throughout the network? Is that something you encourage, or how do you perceive those things?
Definitely, I think innovative ideas is the wave of the future. Since I was appointed in March of 2013, I have made it a goal of going around and visiting the various agencies. And you're right, when you see one community action agency, you've seen one, but there are a lot of similarities. Just in the composition of the board is one thing that is throughout all of the agencies. But it is important that we think of innovation, and I think PADNET is definitely the only agency, you know, this is one of a kind, and I think it's so important as we look towards the future of what it is that we can do and grow and become. And so my goal is to learn as much as I can, and that we can have cross-pollination and sharing of the various things that are occurring through the community action agencies.
Now, we've talked about the agencies, but what about your team? I know that we've had the pleasure of working with people there that, I mean, your role, your desk, I heard once that the corner office may change, but many people are in that department, you know, for years and years and years. Can you share a little insight about the people that make up your team? And
It is a very good team, very dynamic team, and we do have a lot of staff that have worked at the department for many, many years. And part of my goal was to really ensure the longevity of the department. Key players in the department would be the Chief Deputy Director, which is Jason Wembley, who's been in the department a long time, very knowledgeable, very well informed, and knows the program areas and knows how to work well with our network of agencies. We have a relatively new admin deputy. We have a very strong PR person, Rachel Arizola. So I mean, we have a very strong team that works very hard. We try to be as adaptable and as flexible as we can. We're currently working on developing our department's strategic plan. And so that's an area that I'm really looking forward to. It gets a little exciting to think about, you know, 5 years out, where would you really like to see the department be able to be, and bringing the network along the way with us.
when do you expect the strategic plan to be released?
July of 2015, it'll be out.
So you've got a lot of work ahead of you.
Yeah, we do, because what we wanted to do is make it so that the strategic plan was dynamic. It wasn't something that just sat on the shelf.
Right.
So we're prioritizing the projects that we have and wanting to develop performance measurements so that we can have a dashboard to see where we need adjustment. If new initiatives come on board, what do we need to adjust in order to bring on a new initiative? So we're hoping to make it very dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Is there any role that the network will play in that process in terms of giving feedback, you think, or is it something you would basically just share once it's all done? Or
well, we did initially go out with some surveys to the network to kind of test, you know, what have we been doing right? What would you see as a need for us to improve on? And, you know, we'll continue to have the dialogue and have the conversation, because it won't do much good if we have a strategic plan that it doesn't work well for everybody. So I think one of the key themes is really around productive partnerships, and the network is vital to that.
when you think about your vision, I mean, you've been there long enough to understand the network to some degree, and you know your team, and you're thinking about a strategic plan. But if you could wave the wand that you have and sort of look forward to the future, what would your vision be for CSD as you go about the work that you do?
What I'd like us to really focus a little bit more on is the poverty issues and how we can be more informative about what those challenges are, and know, for instance, we have the official poverty measure and we now have a California poverty measure. Right. So how do we influence policy, and what can we do at the state level to really help make the changes that are needed in order to have a difference in the lives of those that we serve? So that's what I would like us to do more, and working across the state departments in order to be able to be as effective as possible.
Is there anything that you can think of that when you think about well, first of all, how many agencies in the state does CSD support? Maybe we should share that as well. We
have 60 community action agencies, and we have 12 agencies that are energy-only providers. So we have partnered with about 72 different agencies throughout the state.
Wow. And your team has specific responsibilities for all of us, I know, and that in itself must be quite a challenge, just bringing us all together.
It can be challenging, but the important part is that we have services that are provided statewide, so that's definitely an important factor.
Right. And in the beginning, I talked about the tripartite board, but I know you have two sides of the house. You have what's under Community Service Block Grant, or CSBG, and then you have the energy side of the house, along with the administrative pieces of that. In a snapshot, could you kind of explain what goes on under the umbrella of energy versus under the umbrella of CSBG?
So the Community Services Block Grant provides the funding in which to provide services such as education, employment services, nutrition services. So it can be, depending upon each local agency's needs, it could be a whole host of programs that they oversee. Energy is more specific to providing utility assistance payments so that if an individual is unable to meet their home energy needs, that there's utility assistance payments. And that's under the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, which is one of the programs that when the Census Bureau talks about safety net programs, that also is one of the programs that's mentioned. So I think that that's really important for us to know that in addition to CalWORKS and CalFresh, which are the food assistance program and the temporary assistance for needy family program, that our programs are listed as well. But also in order to have ongoing services in the way of weatherization so that the family can reduce their overall energy burden, being able to go into a home and provide caulking, weatherization, insulation, those things that ultimately will reduce families' amount of energy that they have to expend in order to be safe and healthy.
When you started out this program and you talked about small but mighty, I mean, clearly when you think about the depth and breadth of the services that you just mentioned, CSD's fingerprints are all over the state in a very important way. We have about a minute left. What would you like for your legacy to be when people think about Linné Stout and her term as director? What would be the one or two things that you would like for people to remember about your role?
Well, I think as we think about the 50th anniversary of the Economic Opportunity Act, it's important always to remember the history. I think my legacy that I would like to have is how do we effectively move into the future and really affect change and improve the lives and really have some self-sufficiency impact. So I'd like us to collectively have more innovative ways that we're addressing the issues of poverty.
Wow. What a perfect way to wrap up our conversation. Thank you to Linné Stout, Director of the Community Services Development Department at the State of California, for all that she does as a leader that I admire and support, and for her team and what they do in support of all of us as community action agencies in the State of California. Thanks most of all to you out there who are watching us wherever you are in the State of California or throughout the world for that matter, on PADNET.tv, online, or on channels 42 and 31 here, 32 rather, and 41 in the city of Long Beach. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of PADNET Presents. I've been your host, Derek Simpson. Take care.